an idea of how paths works gets really important, because here we have sort of a tree. Is that the root of our drive? Like if we were in Linux, this would be our slash, and in Windows, this is going to be our root of C. And then we have a folder in C called users. And then inside of users, we have a Jerisha folder. Inside of Jerisha, we have a data folder. And inside of data, we have a folder for the month called January. And so how we actually would write that if we wanted to go to that folder is we would do C:\users \Jerisha \data \January. So we're navigating this whole structure in order to get to this folder. If this was Linux, it would be cd space /users /Jerisha /data /jan. So we're using a very similar system to navigate the structure in Linux that we would in Windows. Very similar way that the file structure is set up. Except instead of users, it would be USR, and then it would be the username and then the folder that you're going to. So there's slight differences, but you're going to see a lot of similarity between how a Linux file system is set up and how a Windows file system is set up, which is going to help you when you start navigating between the two of them, because you're going to be able to utilize those similarities. It's just that little pieces of syntax may trip you up because you go, well, this works on Windows, but it doesn't work on Linux and vice versa. So we'll try and keep some of those straightened also. Okay. So one of the things about relative paths is a relative path is a path to a folder, but you're getting there. It'll be different depending on what directory you currently are in. And this is where Will was talking about at the end of the lab last week, that it was really easy to get confused because you're trying to navigate, but if you weren't in the right directory, your navigation got all messed up. And it was one of those that you didn't have a diagram of what the directory structure looked like. So it was really easy to get confused about where exactly you were in the structure. So let me pull up, let's see, the virtual machine in a second here. Just have to make sure I get it. Let me get this brought up, power it up, and then I'll bring it over and just sort of walk the directory structure a little bit. Okay. Wrong virtual machine. That would help if I'm actually in the right place. And that one. Okay, this is the one that I want. Okay, let's see if we can get this as big as we can. Let's see, view. Can't really get the terminal view to see that much bigger. How is that looking on your guys' end? Can you read the text, or is it sort of fuzzy?
I can read it. Good.
Okay. So we started that we downloaded a file to our downloads directory. And when we downloaded this file to our downloads directory, the first command I had you guys run was ls, which is list. And then we had a tar file in our folder. Then we ran a command that unzipped our tar file, which is sort of like tar is Linux's equivalent of zip. Is you use tar to compress a file together so that everything is inside it, basically in a nice, easily to transport ball, and then you run a tar command to unzip that file into a folder, and in our case, it unzipped this into Linux-exercises. And then one of the things that I was did in the lab also is I had that you could use tab complete. So we did a CD space, and then we did LI, and then it is case sensitive. So you need to make sure that you're doing lowercase, and then you do a tab. It goes to the actual folder name, and then moved into our Linux exercises. So you can tell what folder you're in at any given point in time because it's actually going to list it right here. And this is the folder we're currently in. And then we can do an ls to list what's inside that folder. And now we have 3 separate folders inside there. So we have the backup script, chem, and moving around. And then we wanted to go into our moving around. So we do a cd space, mov, tab, and then we can do an ls. And now we can see inside there, we had another zip folder. So one of the things, or another tar folder. So part of what you can do in Linux is you can have a folder inside a folder inside a folder. And it looks like somebody has a question. Okay, looking great. Okay. Just trying to make sure I keep up with if anybody has questions. So now that we're in moving around, we have, and we did the untarring of the directories.tar.gz. That unzipped that into 2 separate folders, inputs and outputs. So now we want to go into, let's say, our outputs. If we do an ls, we see that there's 3 different files currently in that folder. And then if we do a cd period period, we'll go down our tree. So we're back down to where we were up here. So we had gone into our outputs folder, and then we came back down to, now we're in the next folder down, which is our moving around folder. You can tell that we're moving around by it listed right here. And now what we want to do is go into inputs. And inputs has all of the PDB folders. And the PDB folders are the ones that are actually going to have some data that we're going to look at. So if we look at one of these, so we're doing a cat, and we're going to do a cat of, let's pick INP4, INP_4 dot PDB. Oops. Let's see, cat INP. Oh, that's why I had the period in the wrong place. INP dot. There we go. Okay, so we did a cat, which again, remember, cat was how we could view into a file without changing it. And so what we did is we looked inside one of those folders. We looked inside our INP_4 folder, and all of a sudden we see that this is data about glycerin. And one of the questions I had you guys looking for coffee. And so you were trying to find one of these data sets that actually dealt with coffee. So all you have to do is just, you can do your up arrow, change the command, and we're looking in number 5. It's not 5. Let's try 3. And if we look at 3, all of a sudden, oh, it's caffeine. And so here we have our data set all about caffeine. And so that's how you were able to find the data set about caffeine. It was just by doing that cat command, started looking through the various data that's in there to find the one that you're looking for. So that part makes sense to most people when you're navigating through, or did anybody get stuck in this part?
It makes a lot of sense. Might have to rewatch this video, but very good stuff.
Okay. So the next part that I had you guys working on is where I actually had you then navigating the file structure again. So right now we're in the inputs folder, and you can tell that by it's showing the folder name right there. And so what I had you run is a couple commands where you looked inside folders to see if you could find things. And for that, you needed to be in the right folder in order to do your looking. Let's see, if I have that in my command history, which I probably should, because I don't have the lab open. And okay, so here, if you did an ls ***.pdb in inputs, And did I have the right? Okay, that way. Asterisk 1. So you can use some of the wildcards. Yes, Ian.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I just had a question in
Yeah.
regards to the, typing in SU and then typing in our password. I noticed that you had us do that on the lab a few times. Like, how
Yep.
often do you have to do that?
Well, it depends on what you're doing. So what it is right now, I am the user Buck Rogers on this system. And it just happens to be one of my default users that I tend to set up on systems when I'm building them for examples. So I'm logged in as Buck Rogers. And Buck Rogers has administrative rights on the server. So when I set it up, I made sure I checked that checkbox that says Buck Rogers has administrative rights. So Buck Rogers can do most anything on this system that does not require root privileges. And root is the God privileges. It's like administrators on a Windows server that you can do anything and everything on that server. But you don't log into a server as root. What you do is you elevate your privileges to root, and that's what SU is about. And so if I were to now, let's say we wanted to go to SU, I'll have it go SU and then put in the password. Now all of a sudden you'll see I'm still in the same directory, but now it says that I am root on the server RHEL, whereas before I was Buck Rogers on the server RHEL. So I'm now a different user. And so if I were to go to the tilde symbol, that will take me to the home directory. And the home directory of root, oops, it was CD, sorry. So if you go to the home directory of root, you're going to see that it's empty or you have a couple files in it like I happen to because I was doing some work on as root when I did SU. But let's say I exit root and go back to being Buck Rogers, and I go CD space tilde to go back to the home directory of Buck Rogers, and I do an ls. Now Buck Rogers has a whole different directory structure. So what it is root is a whole separate user that you can impersonate by using SU. So it's you're simulating the user root by using SU. And what it is you stay in that user when you actually select SU. If you just want to run a command as root, but then still stay as your user, that's where you use sudo, sudo. So then you're just selectively taking that privilege just to run the command. And then as soon as you're done with the command, you're back to your regular self. So that one, it'll ask you to authenticate when you run it. But anytime you're impersonating that root user, then it's going to ask you to actually put that credential in. And then if you exit, the next time you come back in and you need to run it again, it'll ask you for the credential. But as long as you've SU to root, you're root, you can do anything you want as root, not have to authenticate again. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. I was just, it threw me off when, because if you type in SU and then it goes to password, it doesn't show you typing anything in.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is going on? And I had to look it up, but that makes sense now. So I appreciate you going over that. Thanks.
Oh, no problem. It's Linux is a new operating system for you guys that most of you have probably never touched. And so this is going to be one of those that you're going, this doesn't work like Windows. This is sort of weird. And it does things. And the other thing that people get sort of freaked out about is they run something and it just comes back to a command prompt and doesn't say anything. And you're just like, did it work? I can't tell. I don't know what just happened here because I entered the command and it went away and it came back and there's nothing here. So that's one of those big things with Linux that sometimes freaks people out is that it doesn't respond like you're used to because you've been living in a Windows world. Windows is pretty good about giving you some feedback of saying, and sometimes it's really annoying, you have little blue or green bars running across the screen saying, installing 5 more minutes or something like that. And you're sitting there going, derp, 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 waiting for it to finish. Whereas Linux will just chew away in the background and just come back to a prompt and say, okay, I'm done, but doesn't tell you other than it just gave you a prompt. And that is something that sort of trips people up all the time is that they're just sort of like, but it didn't tell me anything. And what it is as you get more savvy on it, you'll know how to actually look for things that will show you if things actually worked or not. So when we were working on this, what happens sometimes is people navigated away from sort of the lab content. So if you went CD period and CD period, all of a sudden you might have gotten down to the root of the home folder. And then if you did an LS, you're looking at all this and you're going, I don't know where I was. I don't know where my stuff was. And then none of the commands are going to work anymore. And so what you have to do is just remember where we started is we downloaded. So it's going to be in our downloads folder. So if we do CD space DOW, hit tab to finish the tab, complete the downloads, and then do an LS, there's our file folder that we were looking for, Linux exercises again. And then if we go to our Linux exercises by doing CD LIN tab complete, and we're in Linux exercises, we do an LS, we can see our stuff inside there. We have our backup script chem and moving around. Moving around is where we were working, so we'll do a CD space MOV tab LS to see what's inside there, and there's our inputs and outputs again. So we switched to root, we moved around, we came back, and then we came back up from the home directory back to where our folders were in order to find things. Does that help where some of you guys got stuck, or is there another place where you were stuck?
I mean, I'm stuck on a completely different part on Nab 7, but I'm going to ask you about that after class.
Okay. Well, I'm sort of in that neck of the woods, so let me see if I can get that up and we can start, because you aren't the only one. And I think somehow I missed my normal demo last week. I was looking through stuff and I'm going, why didn't I do this demo that I usually do when I'm covering this content? And I don't know what happened on that, so I apologize for that. Normally, I am pretty good about making sure I include those in. So I'm trying to sort of backfill some of that stuff that we should have had last week to make sure that you guys understand the concept before we get into Windows. Okay, and we're going labs. Okay. So the place where people, I think, oh, the VMware shared folder stuff. So what I would say with the VMware shared folder stuff, give it your best shot. Don't spend a lot of time with it, and I'm not going to dock you points on that section. Partly
I'm actually stuck on a slightly different part because for some reason I can't find RHEL server RHEL 7, but I could find the optional tools.
Oh, okay. So what that would be is on your virtual machine, and let me, yeah, I need to bring this. Out of full screen. Okay, so where that would be is when you're in your virtual machine tools and you go to settings, and then you have it mounted. So somewhere on your laptop, you've downloaded the RHEL 7 ISO. And all you're doing is just changing where that pointer is for your virtual CD drive using the browse command to find where the RHEL 7 is. Most likely it's like in your downloads folders where most people have been dropping it when they actually do the download of the ISO to their laptop. So you should just be able to select that and go. The other thing that people were having a problem was Red Hat tools not showing up, the reinstalled Red Hat tools. And that's one of those sort of weird things that, yeah, it was grayed out like this. So it was grayed out for people like this, and all of a sudden you're going, but I can't install VMware tools, so how am I going to get it so that I can actually do this file share folder so I can move files between my Windows box and my Linux box? And it's sort of a weird thing that the reason it's not showing up is because updates aren't applied, but it didn't seem like everybody had it that if they applied updates that it actually then took care of the problem. Part of what we're running into is VMware tools by default are part of the Red Hat Enterprise install, but not all of VMware tools. So it puts just enough in there so that you can use your mouse, you can use everything else, and it's going to work in video drivers and networking drivers, but it doesn't add the piece that you need in order to do the shared folder between Linux and Windows. And that's where it sort of gets frustratingly complicated. So in theory, if I just run actually sudo and okay, so that says, okay, let's just try SU. Okay, so now we got the interesting thing that one is still not wanting to do that. So let's try doing it the alternate way, which I mentioned to a couple of you, is that we're going to go looking for, I have to figure out where I installed VMware Workstation. There it is. Tools and upgraders. Not there. So where the file we're looking for should be is under VMware Workstation, the install folder, and then we're looking for the Linux ISO. And then OK. Yeah, we're going to disconnect anyways. OK, so we did a force update. And then let's see if it actually mounted it or not. Okay, so it's, now we just want to connect it. So now in theory, it should be mounted. So let's see if okay, is already mounted. Ah, that's why. It was currently mounted, so I need to do a dismount, eject. Oh, actually ejected it from up there. Settings. Okay, so we got the mounted the drive. And edit, paste. And VMware tools. And we change directory to VMware tools, and then we're going to just sort of see what's inside that directory and edit, paste. Okay, we just mounted that. And now we have to look at what the individual number is that we're dealing with. And ours on this one, let's see, it was 10.3. So it's changed quite a bit since this was already, and then it's 21. dash 7724444. Okay. That does the full expanding of that tar file. And we're going to go and change our directory to the VMware Tools distribution. And you can see here that we've changed the directory to VMware Tools distribution. And then we're going to run the command to actually do the install, which is // and what that is sort of like a run command when we're in Linux. And then we're going to do VMware install.pl. Okay. And check to see if there are any missing drivers. And yes, we want to make sure we check for missing drivers because we're wanting to add more stuff. And we're going to do the default user bin. And we'll just do the default there. And take the default there, take that. And yes. We're going to take the default. So it's going to show you where it's putting things. And as long as you don't want anything other than the defaults, you can just hit enter or yes for various things that it's asking you questions on. And yes. And already exists, overwrite. And yes, we're going to overwrite because we're putting something on top of it. Already exists, overwrite. And yes, we're going to do that. And so then we're installing the new version over the top of the old version. And yes, Mike's asking us lots of questions if we want to really, basically sort of like Windows, are you sure you really want to do this? Are you really sure? Are you really, really sure? Linux does that occasionally too. And let's see, it's going to keep running. Okay, so and then you get the configuration of VMware Tools 10.3.21 build 1477.244 for Linux is complete. So now we've completed successfully updating our VMware kernel. So now we're going to actually be able to get to that next step. So now we can eject our CD. And now that we've ejected it, and it's just a weird VMware thing that it's not showing up here to reinstall VMware Tools, whereas on my other one it does, even though they're basically built identically. But for what we're doing, you don't need that as much as long as you can find that proper ISO file in order to actually do the install. And then we can go into the RHEL tab in VMware. We're going to go to Options. And shared folders, and we're going to enable, and then we're going to add, and then the host path, we want to find where on our system that we're going to actually have this file that we want to take. I'm going to pull it from this folder, make a new directory just called VM share. What did I have you guys call it? I had that, you call it CNET. I'll do it the same. Sometimes I'm notorious for just sort of going, oh yeah, I'll just do this, and then in lab I had you do something totally different. So I'll try and stay on task with the lab here. Okay, so we created it. It's called CNET 11.11. Okay, enable the share. So now the folder has been created. It's shared with our virtual machine. And so then what we're going to do is we can go to our Windows box. And I need to go to and was on new text document. I'm just going to call it stuff.txt. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our Red Hat box. What did I have you guys call it? Oh, had you guys call it test.txt. Okay, so we need to be root to do this. I currently am root, so I don't need to change who I'm logged in as. And so what we want to do is mount. So we're mounting. So we're changing the directory to the folder called mount. Yes, Ryan.
So the trouble that I keep on having over and over again is when I put in default for the where to install the binary files, it tells me it's not a absolute path.
Oh, so you took the default and it's still saying that's not an absolute path?
Correct.
Are you running it as root or are you running it as your user account?
As root.
As root.
Because I put in SU, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, it sounds like you were really close, so I'll be curious on that one. So far, because this is a clean scratch rebuild of Red Hat that I just threw together real quick. Didn't do anything special, just ran the update to make sure it was updated to current. And it did exhibit the same behavior that you guys were seeing about not seeing the reinstalled VMware tools. So sort of going around the horn to do it sort of the back way. Okay, looks like somebody else had a question or a text. Let's see, what do we got? No. Okay. So at which point during the install process was it giving that sort of weird error?
So at the very end of Lab 7, basically right after putting in the install.pl, hit the yes, and then it goes directly into where do you want to install the binary files. So I did a little research, did the default, and then it says it's not a default or it's not is a relative path, and I need to enter a absolute.
Because it should have had the absolute path already listed when you're doing it, because like on this one, let's see if we can scroll back in time if we have enough. Let's see if it.
I have it up now if you want to share my if you want me to share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead. Because these are the type of things that are really good to sort of do a everybody talk about what worked and what didn't work last week, so we can all sort of learn and get caught up to the same place. Because everybody struggled a little bit on this last week, but that's actually not a bad thing. Okay, let me blow that up so I can actually see it a little better here. Okay, so installing VMware tools, in which directory do you want to install the binary files? Okay, where are you directory-wise, though? That looks like what maybe.
So I had to, it didn't work, so I closed the thing and then I had to redo it, and then it basically said, do you want to reinstall? Which I never finished the reinstall or the install to begin with because I couldn't find a direct path.
Right. Well, let's see if I can on mine give you what the path should be. So is let's see, installing via, how do you want to install the binary files? Okay, so we're at the initial binary files directory point. And if I can actually get to the point where that's wanting to be, it blew up lots of files. Sorry, I'm going through my install just to sort of map to try and find the exact place where you are. to get the actual path.
No worries, I appreciate it.
Okay. Systems have to remove interfaces packages. Okay, try /user/bin. So /usr/bin. And then the init directories. Okay. Oh, it's going to ask us on everything, isn't it? /etc/rc.d. Init scripts. Okay. What's it saying? Etsy. Okay, that one just hit enter. And hit enter. I think everything else you should be able to hit enter unless it gives you a yes or no question. Now it looks like it's on the correct route. And I'm wondering if it was one of those, it may have gotten a yes when I was expecting an input or something and taken it and done something weird.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I tried it multiple times and I kept on getting the same issue.
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of those you just needed the right input. Yes. Yes, that's the feature that we're wanting. And it's okay skipping those because those are already installed. Yeah, I think you're going to be on your way now. I think it was just that one little path at the beginning was just wrong, and just needed to correct that, and then it's should be home free.
Okay. All right, sounds good. I'll give you back the screen and I'll let
Okay,
you know
no
if it
problem.
doesn't. Thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. That's sort of what's cool about this is, you know, by solving your problem, we're helping solve other people's problems too, because you aren't the only one that was having some issues on this of trying to make things work and having things be a little squirrely around the edges. And you guys were pretty good about working together too, which is also a really good thing, is that as a cohort, some of you are going to have some of the answers, not all. You know, one person may have all the answers, but working together, you can work together to actually find answers. And that's a really good way to work as sort of a cohort as you go through the program, because you're going to help each other be stronger in the program by doing that. So I highly, highly recommend asking each other questions, pinging questions off each other is going to make it so that everybody is going to have a stronger experience going through the program. So always good to ask questions. Okay, so we're up to the point where here we're mounting that file folder. So what we're doing is we're changing the directory to a mount, and we're doing the HGFS and then that CNET 1111 folder. So now that we got that mounted, and we can see here the folder is mounted right there. Now if we do an ls, our stuff.txt file on our Windows machine is there, so we can move files back and forth between our Windows machine and our Linux machine. So not quite as clean and easy as you do it on a Windows machine, but it does work. It just takes a couple hoops and hurdles to get there. Everybody sort of following what we did? Questions on what we did? We do have the recording in case you need to play it back too. So it'll be in the chat for our classroom that you'll be able to dive in and play this back if you need to. So that way you can sort of speed it up, slow it down if you need to. So Ben kind of following. Will looks great. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, on Lab 8. Questions on Lab 8, or should I dive back into Windows land? What do we got? Okay, so I don't see anybody saying dive into lab 8, so I think we'll switch back to Windows and talking about Windows. Okay,